All right, welcome. Let's dive right into what is arguably the most critical part of the PMP exam, the process domain. Look, if you want to pass, this is the area you absolutely have to nail, and today we're going to break it all down for you, piece by piece. Just take a look at these numbers for a second. The process domain? It makes up a massive 50% of your exam. Yeah, that's half, literally half of all the questions you're going to face. The people domain is right up there too, super important at 42%, but you can see why mastering process is just not optional if you want to succeed. And here is the first and maybe the most important thing to get in your head. Forget about just memorizing a bunch of terms and ITTOs, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. The PMP exam today is all about scenarios. It tests if you can apply these concepts in the real world. So the key isn't just knowing the what, it's knowing the how and the why in any given situation. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll crack open the process domain itself and see how it's structured. Then, we'll get into the 3 big methodologies you have to know. From there, we'll jump into some real-world scenarios covering planning, risk, and change. And we'll wrap it all up by giving you a solid framework for choosing the right approach on the exam. Okay, let's get into it. To really get a handle on the process domain, you've got to understand how the PMI actually structures all of this content. The whole exam is basically built on this simple hierarchy. So the very top, you have the domain. In our case, that's process. Inside that, you have tasks. These are the big responsibilities of a project manager, things like manage risk. And then supporting those tasks, you have enablers, which are just concrete examples of the work, like implementing a change control process. So for the exam, just remember it like this. Domains are the what, tasks are the how, and enablers are the with what. It's a really powerful way to frame everything. Okay, now that we have that structure down, let's talk about the 3 core ways of working that you'll see over and over again on the exam. Getting the differences between these is absolutely key. First up, we've got predictive, which you probably also know as waterfall. The best way to think about this is building a house. You need that detailed, fully approved blueprint before anyone even thinks about digging the foundation, right? The scope is locked in and the project just flows from one step to the next in a sequence. Change is really, really difficult and expensive, so you plan everything. I mean everything up front. Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got Agile. Think of this like developing a brand new mobile app. You have an idea, but you don't know exactly what users will love, so you build a working version in a short cycle, we call them sprints, get it out there, gather feedback, adapt your plan, and do it all over again. Agile doesn't just tolerate change, it expects and embraces it. And, sitting right in the middle is hybrid. This is basically the best of both worlds, and honestly, it's how a ton of real-world projects actually run. You might use a predictive waterfall-style approach for the parts of the project that are really stable, but then switch to an agile approach for the parts that are still up in the air and evolving. This table right here, this is gold. It just crystallizes the core differences. Just zero in on that 3rd row, change management. In predictive, it's the super formal process, controlled by a change control board. But in agile, change is just welcomed. It's prioritized in the backlog. Understanding these completely opposite philosophies is going to help you answer so many exam questions correctly. All right, enough theory. Let's actually put this into practice with a real planning scenario. This is exactly the kind of thing the PMP exam is going to throw you. Okay, so this is a classic exam question. You see the keywords, right? You've got a hard constraint, that fixed launch date, but you also have a ton of uncertainty. The user-facing features are still being decided. The second you see that mix, your brain should be screaming, which approach fits which piece? So here's what went wrong. The project manager tried to cram everything into one giant, rigid waterfall plan. And what happens? Well, every single time a stakeholder had a cool new idea for a feature, the whole project plan had to be formally stopped, reevaluated, and reapproved. It created a nightmare of delays and, frankly, it just frustrated everybody. And here it is, the light bulb moment. The correct move is to use a hybrid model. For the infrastructure piece, with its fixed deadline and clear requirements, that's a perfect fit for a predictive approach. But for those user features that are still evolving, that's where Agile shines. You manage them in a flexible product backlog. The real skill is matching the right methodology to the right part of the work. All right, let's tackle 2 of the most heavily tested areas in the process domain, risk and change. How you deal with these really depends entirely on the methodology you're using. So, in a predictive project, you spend a ton of time up front trying to identify every possible thing that could go wrong, and you document it in a formal risk register. But in Agile, risk management is more of a continuous conversation. Risks are brought up and dealt with as they emerge, often in daily stand-ups and retrospectives. It's all about adapting as you go, instead of trying to predict everything from the start. Okay, here's another classic. This one's all about change management and governance. You've got a powerful stakeholder. They want something new, and the plan is already approved and locked down. So what is the very first thing you're supposed to do? And this slide just lays out the difference perfectly. In a predictive project, that change request has to go through a formal process with the Change Control Board, the CCB. In an Agile project, though, that request is simply added to the product backlog, and the product owner will decide how important it is compared to everything else. One process controls change, the other one embraces it. Now, this right here is one of the biggest and most common traps on the PMP exam. The project manager wants to be helpful, they want to make the stakeholder happy, so they just bypass the process and tell the team, hey, start working on this. That is a direct path to scope creep, blowing the budget, and project failure. Acting without following the process is almost always the wrong answer. So, what's the correct professional thing to do in a predictive project? You have to follow the change management plan you all agreed on. Step 1, you document the request. Step 2, you analyze what impact this change will have on everything: scope, schedule, cost, you name it. Step 3, you take that analysis to the CCB so they can make an informed decision. And you only, and I mean only, tell the team to start working after you have that formal approval in hand. Okay, let's pull all of this together now. Let's build a simple framework you can use to break down any scenario question on the exam and figure out the right approach. Here are your buzzwords for predictive. If you're reading a question and you see phrases like fixed scope, well-understood technology, regulatory compliance, or anything like a big construction project, your brain should immediately start thinking predictive. These are all clues that you need a lot of upfront planning and tight control. And on the flip side, here are your triggers for Agile. If you see words like dynamic environment, evolving requirements, unclear scope, or something like software development, that's your cue to think Agile. These words are all telling you that you need flexibility, you need to iterate, and you need constant feedback. You know, this quote from Alistair Cockburn really just says it all. The PMP exam isn't testing whether you can follow one rigid set of rules. It's testing your judgment, your ability to look at a situation and tailor your approach to fit what that specific project actually needs. And that, right there, is the ultimate key, not just to passing the exam, but to being a great project manager.